Okay, have we started? All right, we can get started now. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to just see how many people are there. Look like there are a couple of attendees trickling in. All right. Which schools is everybody from? Why don't you post that in the chat? Anybody? All right, so I'm going to get started. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Okay. So I just want to go over the guidelines for our session. And guys, sorry about the formatting issues. And if there has been any feedback in any of the sessions earlier, we're just trying to work out those, online kinks. So the guidelines for the session, the session's being recorded. So if you drop off at any point, you miss anything, you can access any of the sessions in the webinar later and watch them in your own time. The audience video and audio features are off again. Don't share your contact information in the public chat. Send us your questions through the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. So I'm actually going to enable the Q&A right now. And I want to let you guys know, if you post a question in the chat that is for any of the presenters, we're not going to see it. So please post your questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to enable the Q&A right now. So you should have seen a Q&A tab open, and you've got to actually click it so that it turns from gray to black. And then when you ask your question at the bottom, make sure you press send, because it's not like some of the other chat features where you can just press enter and it goes, okay? So yes, make sure all questions go. Ryan wants to know how you win a MESA hoodie. Okay, I don't have any MESA hoodies for this for MESA launch week, but we have some other awesome prizes coming throughout the week. So hold on there, okay? All right. Okay, and just remember, if there's any inappropriate content, you will be removed. Okay, and after this session, share any photos or stories with us on Instagram and Facebook. We have a bunch of hashtags here, and please complete the feedback form. So that will also be in a pop-up at the end of the session. All right. Okay. So your hosts for today are myself, Bianca Chopkamp, that's me crying. I'm the program coordinator for Oregon MESA, and Ebeth is here from OMSI. Some of you may have seen her doing MESA Week in the spring. If you guys aren't familiar with Ebeth, she is an awesome, awesome educator from OMSI. I'll let her continue introducing herself.
Yeah, thanks, Bianca. So my name is Ebeth Andanen. I've been with OMSI for about 15 years. I work in the Turbine Hall, which is the physical sciences and engineering area of the museum. And OMSI's been partnering with MESA to support each other's programs over the past few years. And I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ebeth. And next, we would like to introduce our guest speaker, is Jillian Girard. Jillian is currently and she is our SME. If you guys don't know what an SME stands for, that is subject matter expert, okay? Jillian is currently a researcher at Multnomah County and adjunct professor in the Public Administration Department at Portland State University. She is interested in lots of awesome research topics, including pay equity, stakeholder engagement, data visualization, ecology, science. It looks like the works, it looks like she's good at everything. And we're really happy to have her here today. Okay. So before we get to Jillian's presentation, are there any questions for myself or Ebeth right now? Let's go look at the questions. What do you guys, Amy wants to know, what do you guys do in MESA and how do we do it at home? Okay, so I know this is a little bit interesting. So if you're new to MESA, some of you may be previous MESA students. The way that MESA works is that usually you join MESA through your school. Now, I know a lot of you are working from home right now, but you can still join a MESA schools chapter if it's at your school. You can find out your MESA schools chapter, or if your school has a chapter, by going to OregonMesa.org. And on the main page, actually, let me share my screen. I can show you guys. Let's see. Give me a second while I pull this up. Computer does not want to cooperate. Okay. All right. So for those of you who are following along, if you go to OregonMesa.org, okay, on our main page, we have ways for you to join MESA, okay? This button doesn't actually work. It doesn't link to anything, so don't press on it. This is our map of MESA schools. I'm gonna open that in a new tab and we'll get to that in a moment. There's applications for your school's MESA program by filling out either in English and Spanish. And if you don't have MESA at your school, you can join an invention club. And there's an interest form in English and Spanish, okay? Was that really small for everyone by any chance? I don't know. Ebeth or Jillian, can you let me know if the screen looks really small? Okay, all right. So I clicked on the map of MESA schools, and these are all the Oregon MESA schools. If you're not in Oregon, you have to search MESA USA to find whether MESA has chapters in your state, okay? All right, so if you're searching for your school, there are different regions here, but you can just search, do the search function. And so I'm gonna search Jefferson High School, and that shows up on the map, okay? Just there. So someone whose school is on our MESA schools map would go to applying through the MESA schools program. If you don't see a MESA schools program on the map, fill out the interest form for the Invention Club. If you're unsure, if you're still not sure afterwards, check with some of the teachers at your school, because there are new teachers being added actually within the next couple of weeks. Right. Right. And as far as like what we do in MESA, what you would be doing in MESA as a student. So once you join a MESA schools chapter, or you join an invention club, if your school doesn't have a chapter, you can join the invention clubs online. Once you join either one of those, you would be going to weekly meetings. And then in those weekly meetings, you're going to be learning different engineering, STEM, human-centered design, coding topics. And each week changes. And in your clubs, you're going to be working on projects. So Kelly and Tong mentioned earlier that you would have, you would be sent invention kits that have a bunch of materials. So you'll have those materials to work on stuff at home while you're tuning in online with your MESA chapter or your invention club. Do you guys think that answers the question? Okay. And then your invention club or your MESA chapter, you'll be able to work in teams as well to participate in the National Design Competition, which happens in the spring. Okay, all right. So that, I think that answered Amy's question. If you have more questions, go to OregonMesa.org and see if you can find some of the answers there. I'll also add the Oregon Mesa email at the end of the session so you guys can send questions there specifically about joining the Mesa Schools program or invention clubs. Okay. Let's see. So I think we will continue with the Q&A afterwards, but we want to get to Jillian's presentation. So let's pull that up now.
Hi. I'm Jillian Girard, as has been mentioned already. Thanks for being here. Excited to see the active chat so far. That's great. So today I wanted to talk about fake news, social media, and the spread of misinformation. And the way I want to do that is by looking at 4 different stories of 4 different animals. So the first is Trustworthy Taylor, and Taylor is my dog, so she's the best. And the second story I want to talk about is misinformation, and I will use a sloth as the story for that. And then we'll talk about disinformation using the moose. And then finally, we'll talk about fake news using the fearsome bat. So, as I said, my dog Taylor is very cute, and she is just a very happy camper most of the time. And what I really love about her is I can really tell that what she's telling me with her facial expression, her body language, it's trustworthy information. She never leads me astray. She always gives me reliable and accurate information. So if she's happy under a bunch of leaves, she'll look like it. But if she's out in the rain and really miserable, she also communicates that to me in a really reliable, accurate way. So I'm using Trustworthy Taylor, my good girl, to highlight information because really it's the basis of our relationship. If my dog Taylor didn't give me trustworthy information, then we wouldn't have a great relationship and we couldn't build upon that. So she gives me information I can trust, I give her information she can trust, and the relationship really benefits from that. Is there any, you can just drop it in the chat, but is there any places where you go to for really good, solid, trustworthy information? Like OMSI comes to mind for me. Yeah. Any other thoughts around that? Teachers, God. Teachers are great, yeah. Teachers, librarians, all those places are great sources of information. Okay, moving into our second story is the story of the misrepresented sloth. So some researchers went down to Central America and they wanted to study the sloth. And really they wanted to look at how the sloth interacts with predators. So they went down there and they took the sloth out of the tree and put it on the ground and looked at how fast it could run away from predators. And long story short, sloths are not very good at running away from predators, especially on the ground. And so their conclusion was the sloth is just really bad at running away from its predators. So that's fine, but most of the sloth's predators, so this is an example of one of those predators. This is a harpy eagle, and most of the sloth's predators hunt by sight. So if you're a sight predator, you're really interested in trying to identify things that are moving. So the sloth, if we actually kind of reframe the way we're thinking about the sloth, who's just hanging very still in a tree, not moving a whole lot, if your predators are trying to find you by sight and you're not moving, you're actually really, really good at avoiding your predators. And so this is an example of misinformation. Misinformation is false information that is spread regardless of intent to mislead. So the researchers, when they were talking about the sloth being slow and therefore bad at escaping predators, they weren't trying to deceive people. They just got it wrong. They made a mistake. It may be bad science the way they did it, but they got it wrong, but they were not trying to mislead people. Our next animal is our moose, the poor discredited moose. And what you need to know about the North American moose for this presentation is that they are really big and really strong animals. They can be like 10 feet tall, they run like 35 miles per hour, and they are really big, strong animals. So in the 1700s, there was a French scientist who said basically, our moose are bigger than your moose. And he was talking about the American moose versus the European moose. Obviously, that's not a direct quote. He actually went one step further and said all European animals are bigger and stronger than all North American animals. Why though? So why would this French naturalist disparage all the moose and all the animals in North America? Well, historically, if we're looking at the politics of what was going on, is that Europe was losing power in the world, and America was kind of this new upstart gaining power country. So this naturalist were saying that all of America is weak and small, therefore Europe is better. So Europe's trying to hold on to power here. So the moose is an example of disinformation, deliberately misleading or biased information. So the naturalist that claimed that all the animals in America are small and weak probably didn't even believe it himself. He would make this claim about moose being weak and small in America just to say that America was weak and small. So he was deliberately trying to make America itself look weak and small. It was a deliberate attempt to mislead the public. And finally, we have our fearsome bat. So what are some images or kind of folklore type things or stories that we hear about bats? How do you most encounter them? And you can just drop it in the chat again. COVID-19, yeah. They were one of the animals that was pointed to early on, COVID-19, blood sucking, yep. Here's some quotes as well. A bat flew, oh, it's cut off for me, towards my face. It gives me a perfect view of possibly one of the ugliest creatures alive. Yeah, vampires, addicts, abandoned houses, scary, aggressive, scary Halloween critters. I'm reading what's in the chat. Exactly. Another person said their close association with blood-sucking vampire has given bats a terrifying connotation. So now we know they're ugly, they're terrifying, and then kind of that bringing in that COVID piece, fear-inducing media headlines that often present bats as culprits of disease outbreaks. So now they're fearsome, they're scary, they're ugly, and they're disease-carrying. Doesn't make bats sound very good at all. But what's really important in this story about the bat is it's not just one source. So this isn't one scientist that made a mistake or one history writer trying to mislead folks about a political outcome. This is a large scale. We see it repeated in many, many sources over and over again, and about these negative connotations that are associated with bats. And so that's our example of fake news. So what we're seeing with the term fake news is really an evolution in language. So we don't actually have an official definition of fake news yet. It's still kind of being developed, but it's probably one type of disinformation. So it's not necessarily separate, but when we start to see it at the large scale levels, then we start to get into fake news territory. Frequently, fake news is political in nature. We also see fake news often repeated in multiple outlets, news sources, and oftentimes it's meant to cause fear. And some people have said that bats aren't so bad as their reputation, and that's exactly right. Fake news is, the challenge with it is there's very little context given around it. So the fact that bats help eat insect populations and keep pest control in check, the fact that bats can spread seeds, all of these good things bats do for us get overshadowed because of the amount of fake or biased, misleading information about them. So how is social media related to fake news? A couple of things that come to mind for me is just the accessibility of social media as a resource. So not only for people to be able to consume the news, but also just anybody can post. Also the speed of information. So if I made a mistake before social media, it might be easy for me to track down where that had gone. If it was shared in a paper, I could issue a retraction and take it back and say I made a mistake. But now with social media, the speed is really hard. There's also the ability to target information to specific groups. So if somebody has some fear, they might get fake news targeted at that fear. And finally, just not having as many media outlets doing the research we see a rise in fake news. So those are the 4 stories. Information with trustworthy Taylor. We had the misinformation story of the sloth, where a story got told about the sloth that wasn't intended to mislead people, but it was false information. The moose, where they deliberately tried to make all of the animals of North America seem small and weak in order to make America seem small and weak. And then finally, fake news, widespread and damaging and frequently political in nature and causing fear. So when you're trying to use a lens to look at social media to identify these things, so with the sloth, misinformation, fake news, you're going to look to see if you can identify the source of the information. Do you have an author or website you can go to? Is there a place you can find out more information? Are they trying to sell you something? So oftentimes when they're trying to sell a product or a lifestyle or something along those lines, misinformation can come up. And finally, look at the whole page and not just one post if you're trying to assess a whole post or a whole page. For our disinformation and fake news, if you see a page devoted to a single topic, no other topics are mentioned, it might be fake news. Did you have an emotional response to the information and want to battle back? That might be fake news. It's intended to bring an emotional response. Is it encouraging fear? That might be fake news. And finally, if you're seeing frequent reposts of quotes or news stories, but there's no personal information, there's no stories about your friends or the food you're eating or any of those kind of personal things, that might also be fake news. So that is the end of my content. We're going to look at some troll accounts. And so a troll account would just be a social media account often created to spread fake news or disinformation. So Ebeth, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jillian. I really love the pairing of animals with the different sorts of ways of mis and disinformation and trustworthy information. It made it very memorable. I just want to remind folks that if you have any questions for Jillian, go ahead and pop them over into that Q&A section. That's where we are looking for those questions for her. We're going to do a quick activity together, and then we'll open it up at the end for those Q&A questions. So in a moment here, I'm going to pop up a link for you to follow. We're going to play a game called Spot the Troll. Spot the Troll is sort of a game quiz that was made by Clemson University out of South Carolina. And it's a game that's going to lead us through 8 social media profiles. And our job is taking what we've just learned from Jillian, taking some information that they'll share in the quiz, Your job is to try to figure out whether each profile is a real, authentic person, or it's a troll, it's a robot, or a program set up to spread information. Before I share the link, I do want to say that the intent of this game was to really highlight typical troll behavior, which often includes sharing information and posts that are designed to have a strong emotional reaction. So as you go through this, everybody will be able to go through it at their own pace, but we're all going to be seeing the same stuff. If at any point you're feeling like this is not for you, go ahead and just stop. You don't have to go through the whole program. But we'll give you about 7 to 10 minutes to go through the quiz. I'm going to ask folks that when you're done, go ahead in the chat, just like type done so that we know folks are done, and then we'll turn it over and have some reflection questions going on. So I'm going to give you the link now. You should see it pop up. All right. So click on that link. Go ahead and go through it. And then when you're done, type done in the public chat, and then we'll go through some questions together. See if you can spot the troll.
Jillian, you got a compliment in the chat about your wallpaper. Yeah, just so you all know, everyone loves Jillian's wallpaper. Kyle Hansen posted in the chat, and he says, if you look up on Twitter, fake news spreads faster and further than real news. There's an article about it on Newsela, Newsela. looks like there looks like a few people are finishing up. Any of you who are finished, how many did you get correct? Okay, Ryan said he got 7 out of 8.
Awesome. Maybe we'll give folks 1 or 2 more minutes to wrap up. And if you don't get all the way through, don't worry about it. All right, if you're still doing the spot the troll, feel free to wrap it up. But it looks like folks did pretty well overall. I'm pretty impressed by those numbers. A lot of 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8, 8 out of 8. So as you were going through there and going through the 8 profiles, were there any profiles that surprised you when you found out they either were a troll or were not a troll? If you found the one that you thought was surprising, go ahead and put it in the chat and you can mention why you thought it was surprising.
I think Julia said profile pictures. Let's see, that's a good way to tell. Mary J says, personally, the second one was surprising because I know people that are like this in real life.
Yeah, I know when I was going through it, I definitely got one wrong because I was like, oh, I know, this person's just like somebody I know. So they're real. They've got to be real. And then surprise, it was a troll. Oh. As you were going through, did any of the profiles remind you of any of the animals? The trustworthy Taylor the dog, oh, this is a quiz for me to remember what they were all. The misinformed sloth, the disinformed moose, or the fearsome bat.
Oh, I like this one. Real people can also be trolls. That is true. But I think the difference between the ones in the spot the troll activity is that the spot the troll ones are usually like bots generated by like AI through some sort of different system. So they're not like real people. But that is true. Real people can also be trolls.
Yeah.
I just blocked them. Yeah, Julia said, we live in a trollception where everyone, even yourself, can possibly be a troll.
A good way to check is to look at your belly button. If you have a gem in your belly button and your hair is sticking straight up in a neon color, you're probably a troll. That's a joke.
I don't know if this audience...
I can hear you all laughing from afar.
I don't know if this audience knows about trolls like that.
There's that movie that just came out. It's probably too young for them.
I guess there is the Trolls movie. Guys, the Trolls movie is based on toys that came out
in the 60s.
Yeah.
I was not alive then.
None of us were alive in the 60s, though, which is, I think all of us may have had grandmas who collected them or something. Yep. Mine did. She had a whole bunch across the shelf in the TV room back when we were kids.
Was anybody else, if you have anything else you want to mention about what you learned from that game or anything that surprised you, feel free to drop it into the chat. And I'll also remind you that maybe in about 1 minute here, we'll open up the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Jillian, I saw there were also a couple of questions about this year's MESA program. Go ahead and drop them over there in that Q&A, and we'll turn it back over here to Jillian here in a moment. We should have gotten matching wigs for this presentation now that we're talking about troll dolls.
Yeah, each of us have different color troll hair. That would have been fun. If this had been 1 week later, Halloween week, maybe.
No.
Maybe. Okay.
Right.
So I guess we can move it over to the Q&A.
Yeah.
All right. So remember, guys, if there's a question that you are burning to know about, put it in the Q&A. But also make sure these questions are specifically for, this session. I know you have a lot of questions about demo day and what does MESA look like. And there were some things that Kelly and Tong answered during the opening session, but there's a lot that they'll be going over during the closing session on Thursday. There's also going to be a lot of information in the Intro to New Programs session on Thursday as well. So, but if you have burning questions, go email ormesa@pdx.edu. So does anyone have questions for Jillian? Put those in the Q&A. And I'm going to kind of go to our first question is from Mary Jane Ting, and it says, I'm thinking of pursuing a career in art. Would MESA be able to help me with that at all? That's a good question, Mary Jane, and maybe not necessarily for this session, but I'll still answer it here. I think so. I think that art and STEM are intersecting these days, right? So much of our time is spent online, and there are people who are artists and creators who creating content online for us all, but then on the back end, there are people who are engineers and tech people who are doing all of that. And those people have to work on teams in order to make sure that, the newest version of the website, the amazing graphics, all of that is put together. So you can definitely learn a lot from MESA. that would be relevant in a career in art, because as an artist, there are a lot of different jobs that you can do that are related to tech and related to STEM, but you're still an artist. And if you are working in tech as an artist, you're gonna have to know how to communicate like with some of the STEM related like lingo. So I think you should join MESA. I think it would be great for you. Okay.
Let's turn a similar question over to Jillian. Jillian, how do you use artistic skills like creativity, collaboration, design? How do you use those in your career?
All the time. Growing up, I couldn't draw or paint or anything like that. And so I kind of got this sense of myself that I wasn't a creative person. And that was really harmful as a scientist and researcher. I have to be creative every day because I have to think about new ways of doing things in the world, new ways of, if you're inventing something new, you have to be creative to do that. And so I think creativity is really important. And then how many research shelves are just filled with results and findings and data that nobody's ever looked at? A lot, because telling a creative story and a story in an interesting way is also really important to science and research for me. And then data visualization, which is sort of a very directly sort of linked part of my work, but trying to make sure my data is presented in a way that's beautiful and elegant and also not misleading, which a lot of data visualization is.
Awesome, thanks. Bianca, are there any other questions from the Q&A you want to touch on, or I can ask Jillian more questions out of my head?
Right. I want to know if there are more questions, definitely about like Jillian's work and research about like information. How do you find the right types of information? Yeah,
that's a great question. I mean, I'm susceptible to fake news just like everybody else. Fake news is really designed to get us emotionally attached to it so that we then share it with people we know. It is designed to be shared. And so there was sort of a comment about a Twitter being saying that fake news is shared more than just real news. And that's because the fake news is intended to get this emotional response going. So then you really want to share it because it's so amazing or so distressful to you. And so to get good information, I go to the source as much as possible. So I am looking for, at the bottom of articles, where did they get this information? And if I'm really skeptical, I might even jump to those original sources. Oftentimes, if it's too good to be true, it's just too good to be true. So if I think something is going to solve like some problem, it's going to be kind of a magic pill or magic wand and just take away, whatever problem it is, that maybe I'm wanting to believe it, then I have to take a pause and just think about it a little bit more deeply. But even, there's some where it even has a list of academic journals, but then you read the titles of the academic journals that are supporting it and the articles about, I don't know, something in politics, and all the journals that they're using to show their support are something totally unrelated. So people can make it look good. So just doing my due diligence. But as an academic researcher, I tend to go to academic journals frequently, but that might not be helpful for everybody.
I see a question that hasn't moved over to where we can see them unpublished yet, but I think this is a great one, thinking about career pathways, from Kyle. As someone who wants to do research, what would you recommend I do now as a high schooler? Is cold calling or emailing professors? Whoops, it moved. Is cold calling, emailing professors, researchers the best method? Internships? What would you recommend to build my resume?
That's a great question. Participating in things like this is fabulous. I myself had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so kind of fell into research because what I love about research is that it touches so many different aspects of life. And so I got to explore all these different things. I got to explore equity. I got to explore hazardous waste. I got to explore ecology and biology. So going to become a researcher, oftentimes it's following your interests. So reading about your interests, talking to people about your interests, those types of things I think are really helpful. But as far as building your resume, I think participating in programs like MESA, to be honest, is really, really valuable. And then working on your reasoning, being able to work through problems, just like MESA and a lot of the STEM fields emphasize. So being able to work through problems with creative solutions and think creatively and think in different ways. So anything you can do to kind of challenge yourself to have a more kind of creative solution to a problem, that might be helpful as well. From my perspective.
Awesome, thanks. Oh, Bianca, you're still muted.
I was thanking Jillian for her answer. So I know there are a couple of different questions left in the chat. However, we're running over time. So what I would like you to do, if you have burning questions for Jillian, is there a place where they can contact you?
Yes. Check out my LinkedIn profile or my email. Bianca, do you want to share that with folks afterwards? Or I don't have very many professional social media accounts because I got freaked out by all the trolls.
She got freaked out by all the trolls.
LinkedIn is probably the best. Oh, thank you. There it is, right there. That's the best way to reach me.
Yeah. So that was dropped into the chat. All right. So if you guys want to reach Jillian and ask her any questions, ask her, is this person requesting to be my friend a troll or a don't ask her that, guys. If you don't know the person, just like reject their like offer of friendship or whatever the different social media accounts call it. All right. So I'm just going to remind you guys to fill out the feedback form for this session. I don't know if Kelly and Tong said it in the first. It's popping up for you guys here. So there should be a slide in pop-up offer coming in. Fill out the feedback form for this session. And I know that you guys don't want to have to fill it out every single session, but the more times you fill it out, the more times you get entered into the raffle. So, each time you fill it out, that's one entry. The second time, another entry. So do give us some feedback for this session. All right, so we have about a 7-minute break until our next session where I will explain what is going on with that TikTok challenge. So everybody enjoy your break, get some water, a snack, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, Jillian and Ebeth, for joining us today. Okay, bye, guys. I don't know how to end the session. There's some people in the back end. Help. Help. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ebeth. It was fun.